Okay, well, it's my pleasure to introduce Allison Taylor Levine. I met Allison, I guess it was about 2 or 3 months ago. I don't know if any of you know Don Brown. He's a retired attorney in Wilmington, and he had emailed our group to suggest that we become acquainted with the project, the Spotlight Project, which is a reporting project, which I've seen in the News Journal on numerous occasions,
Right.
including some very excellent reporting very recently in the journal.
Mhm.
And Allison was the person to contact, so I did. We got together. We had what at least for me was a very pleasant coffee. Was I think it
Mm,
was coffee
It was a coffee.
at Brouhaha, and I asked her if she would be willing to speak to our Westminster group, and she was happy to do that. She is the founder and CEO of what's called the Local Journalism Initiative, and Spotlight Delaware is a project of that group. Um, Allison was a reporter at the News Journal for a considerable period, and then after that has worked at various communications and community leadership roles for various organizations, including for 12 years with the Delaware Community Foundation. And she lives here in Wilmington with two children, and she has a passion about journalism, democracy, and community, which are three good things to have a passion about. So, with that introduction, I'll turn it over to you, Allison.
I appreciate it, Dave. Thank you so much. And I happened to run into Sarah a couple of days after that, and I said to Sarah, "I just had coffee with your dad," and she says, "What for?" I said, "We were raving about our daughters, of course."
Well, thanks for covering me like that, Allison.
Absolutely, absolutely. We both have spectacular daughters, so it was a joy to get to talk about them a little bit and also to talk about journalism. And I am working on the screen sharing thing here. This is see if I can do this right. Yeah, thank you. I am super excited to have an opportunity to talk about Spotlight Delaware. So thank you so much. And I want to invite you all to interrupt me at any point. Feel free to jump in and ask questions. Since we're a nice small group, we can make this a more intimate conversation about journalism and community and democracy and how we can bring people together through local news and information. I am the founder and CEO of Spotlight Delaware. I am super passionate about the role of local news in helping to build democracy and to build community, to help people build social capital and to bridge our differences and to help people be part of the system, to be part of democracy. And I'm particularly passionate about Delaware. I am not born and raised here, but I moved here about 25 years ago. My late husband, Jason Levine, was the sports editor and the editorial page editor at the News Journal. He and I came here as a package deal to work at the News Journal, and he stayed there for the remainder of his career and his life. And I moved on and worked in all kinds of different things. But this has always been my passion. So after about, I was working at the Delaware Community Foundation, as Dave said, for about 12 years. And on January 12th of this year, I finally got to leave my job at the DCF and launch this full time. So Spotlight Delaware is all about empowering communities through independent local journalism. And I usually like to start by talking a little bit about why. Why should we care? Yeah, it's a little bit sad, especially for some of us who were used to reading that physical newspaper with our cup of coffee in the morning. It feels kind of sad that the paper got so thin and there's just not much in it anymore. And it just kind of feels like things are a lot of change. But it's actually even more than sad that local news is on the decline. It's actually detrimental to our communities. It's actually bad for our democracy. And that's why we're doing this. So there's a lot of research out there that shows us and tells us that When local news declines, so does our democracy. So do our communities. This is statistically significant actual research. This is not just my gut instincts. When local news dies in a community, we see our government become less efficient. Our taxes actually go up. The cost of borrowing for government goes up. The banks charge more for a community to borrow money when that community doesn't have a strong local news system. We also see violent crimes cleared at a lower rate. Nobody's watching what the police are clearing and not clearing. There's less motivation, less incentive to do that, less oversight. We also see civic engagement drop. There's a statistically significant drop in voter turnout. Fewer people actually run for office. Fewer people call their legislators. And when they do call their legislators, those legislators call back less often. So we actually see a decline in participation in Rotary, in what's the other one called? I've drawn a blank. Kiwanis. We see a drop in Glee Club. We see a drop in church congregations when we have less local news. So we see a real reduction in the way we engage as a community. We also see an increase in polarization. I'm sure some of you have dealt with this, that sense, and I'm certainly guilty of it myself, that you voted for the wrong guy, so there must be something wrong with you. You're either stupid or you're evil, and I'm not going to work with you anymore. And that kind of tribalism, it's very human, but it doesn't do our communities any good. And when we have less local news, we see that polarization get worse and worse. And that is evident in an increase in straight ticket voting. People walk into the voting booth, they don't even look at who the candidates are. They just click that R, they click that D. They're not thinking about what the candidate actually stands for, what their policies are. They're just going with that label. We also see an increase in misinformation and bias. I don't think this will be any surprise to any of you. The less high quality local news we have, the more the national beast fills that need for information, that need for news, and we become more susceptible to biased information and misinformation. And we also actually see increases in inequities, particularly in Black and Brown communities. Local news is dying fast because of the realities of it, and also because of perceptions of less wealth, lower wealth in some of these historically marginalized communities. We see local news withdraw from those communities first. So that's why this matters. Why should we care about local news? This is why we really should. So that's why we started Spotlight Delaware. And Spotlight Delaware is a new collaborative nonprofit newsroom for Delaware. It's a unique, first of its kind newsroom. We actually partner with other newsrooms throughout the state and share all of our content for free, all the information we produce for free. Our mission is really to inform and engage Delawareans about how government decisions affect your daily lives, and to empower you, to arm you and equip you with the information that you need to advocate for the change that you want to see in your communities. So we're not going to tell you what to advocate for, but we want you to have the information about what's going on and what decisions are being made. Beg your pardon. And how you can make a difference in those things. Our audiences, we really focus on covering and serving historically underserved and underrepresented communities in Delaware. Like most places, that means Black and Brown communities. It means Spanish speaking, LGBTQ. It also means rural communities that don't have a lot of access to good information. And in Delaware, it also means more conservative voices, which makes for some strange bedfellows, we got to admit. But it's important in a democracy that we have a robust civil discourse, that we have lots of ideas at the table. So we really focus on making sure that we elevate lots of different kinds of voices in our work. The other big chunk of our audience in Spotlight Delaware is policymakers and influencers, nonprofit leaders, the folks who need to be hearing these messages from their different constituents throughout the state. So right now, Spotlight Delaware publishes 3 days a week. We publish on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and it comes out as you can have an email newsletter straight into your inbox, and I'll show you at the end how to sign up for that if you're interested. And we are expanding to 5 days a week in the new year. We do investigative and explanatory journalism largely. It's all about Delaware. What is special about our journalism is that it is community-powered journalism. Our editorial team spends about 30% of its time in the community. We engaged with hundreds and hundreds of people. We've led more than 25 community conversations throughout the state, listening to people and trying to understand what they want and need in terms of local news and information. What are the stories and concerns that they have? And then we come back to the newsroom with that information, and we do the reporting that they ask us to do. We generate the stories and the information that they need to know about. We do lots and lots of different kinds of events to get different people involved. We lead what are called pop-up newsrooms, where we take our entire news staff, all our reporters and editors, and we set them up in different parts of the state. We go to libraries and senior centers and community centers, and we put up our banner, and our reporters put up some signs and sit there and do their reporting all day and invite people to come and talk with them, learn about what it is to be a reporter, get to know them, and also share their ideas and their questions and what they need to know about from the community. We also do formal listening sessions where we go into the community and to specific segments of the community where people are often underheard or just not represented well. We've gone and done sessions in the Haitian community, with the Guatemalan community, LGBTQ community, lots of different folks. We've done a series of activities we call charlas y cafecitos, where we go and speak with our Spanish-speaking community, and the vast majority of our team does speak Spanish. I do not, but we have a lot of folks who are bilingual, so we're able to really engage that community also. And we also do what we call live journalism events, where we go out and help people understand how to navigate life in Delaware. We did one this week where we went and helped a bunch of different families. We did this at the Kingswood Community Center and really talked people through how to register their kids for school and how to manage the school system, public school system in Delaware. It's very complicated. I'm grateful my kids are grown now, because gosh, it is difficult to figure out charter schools and magnet schools and choice and all these things. So we walk through all of that with them to help folks understand how to access the different resources that are available in Delaware. It's really important to us, as I was saying, to build agency. We want to help people take action in Delaware and influence, drive the change that they want to see. So this is a story that ran just this week about the proposed $10 million investment that the city of Wilmington is looking at making in the new the bridge, the new education building that's being proposed. That's a conversion of an old Bank of America building. And what we do is, with every story we write, I don't know if you can see this here, there's a box that says, "Why should Delaware care?" So we put it right at the top of that story, just in a couple of sentences. Why should you, as an individual Delawarean, care about this story? Why is it relevant to you? And we try to put that in as plain of language as possible. And then we tell the story, and then in as many cases as practical, we try to provide an action step. So in this particular story, we had a button here that says contact the bill sponsor. So we're not telling you whether we think that there should be this investment made or not. That's not our role. Our role is to give you the information. And then this is how you can contact the people who are making those decisions. And you, as a constituent, can tell them what you think should happen. And we also provide some more information here about a committee meeting where people can also go and share their voices and express their positions and concerns. So we really want to make people, help people understand easily how they can get involved in these kinds of decisions. Because civic engagement is more than voting. We can do this on an everyday basis in lots of smaller ways like this. I'm going to skim through this slide just so that you know that we have some actual people doing this, working behind the scenes here. We have a board of directors, and we also have an advisory board of some folks from around the state who give us some good guidance and help keep us on the straight and narrow. Uh, this is our editorial team. This is really the stars of our show. Jake Owens here at the top left is our editor-in-chief. Some of you might know his name because he was previously the editor-in-chief at the Delaware Business Times. And he's been running Delaware newsrooms for about 15 years. He's really experienced and talented. And then we have 5 reporters who are working on our team right now. We just launched on March 1st, so we're still growing. Carl Baker is our senior reporter, and some of you might recognize his name. He used to work with the News Journal. Also, Jose Ignacio Castaneda Perez. He did also work with the News Journal a few years ago. Then he left, went out to Arizona and covered immigration on the Mexican border for a while. But he was so excited to hear about Spotlight Delaware that he actually moved back to Delaware to work with us here. And then these 3 on the right, Brianna Hill, Julia Marola, and Nick Stonecipher, they're respectively covering largely Wilmington government accountability. Brianna covers Wilmington mostly. Julia covers education, and Nick Stonecipher is covering land use issues, development, environmental issues, and healthcare. So they're 3 newer graduates, and they are just rock stars in their own right. They're all doing a great job. So why are we doing this? Like we talked about at the beginning, all these kinds of bad things happen to communities and to democracy when we don't have good local journalism. So that's why we're here. We are here to provide watchdog journalism for our communities. We are here to ensure government accountability, to make sure that we are providing that oversight of the public sector. We want to help encourage civic engagement. We want to help people get to know each other, work together, and empower them to be part of our democracy. We also want to foster civil discourse. We want to facilitate good conversations among people with different ideas and beliefs and help us all talk to each other. And ultimately, we want to make sure that all voices are getting an opportunity to be heard and considered so that we can have some diversity of perspectives in our community. Some of the work that we have done in just the past 7 months, a lot of our investigative coverage, some of you may have already spotted it because as Dave mentioned, our articles appear in different publications in addition to just Spotlight Delaware. You might have seen some of them in the News Journal, or if you read the New York Post or whatever it is. We uncovered a story about some secret funds that were being used to finance the port renovations at Edgemoor. Down at Rehoboth Beach, the town manager is getting a very, very unusually high compensation package. So we did some investigation into that. We did a lot of coverage during the primary election since this was a particularly challenging primary year, and learned a lot of interesting things and shared those with the community. And right now we are doing some work on the opioid grants allocation. Some of you may have heard a little bit about that Delaware has a big pot of money from the opioid settlement. That money is being distributed as grants. And frankly, there's some questions about how that money is being managed and dispersed. So we are really digging into that because that is money that belongs to you and me as taxpayers. And it's part of our role is to help provide that oversight. So that's a little bit about Spotlight Delaware. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you, and I'd love to have a few questions. If you're into the QR code thing, you can scan that with your phone, or you can just punch in the URL to sign up for our newsletter. It's spotlightdelaware.org/newsletter. And you're welcome to, contact me anytime. This email address and phone number go straight to me. That's my cell phone number. So I'm happy to talk anytime. I would love to hear any questions or comments any of you might have.
I just wanted to, I have a couple questions, Allison, but I don't want to hog the thing. I just want to first say that uh, Spotlight's supported by donations. Is that correct?
Yes, and thanks. I must have run over the slide or forgotten the slide about our business model. Spotlight Delaware is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I really must have missed this. Oh, here it is. How can you support us? That's a really important one. I wish I had missed it, but thanks, Dave. You queued me up.
Sure.
Spotlight Delaware is a 501c3 nonprofit. We got a couple of large grants to get us off the ground. We got a grant from a national organization called the American Journalism Project, which is helping to seed newsrooms in small communities, smaller communities like ours around the country. We're one of 45 around the country. And then we also got a grant from the Longwood Foundation. And otherwise, I've been out there kind of fundraising, cobbling together grants as best I can to pay our staff. So, ways that you can help to continue this work is to spread the word. If you see a story that you think is good, in-house, we've started calling them Hey Martha stories. It's that story that you read and you want to go, Hey Martha, did you see this thing in Spotlight Delaware? You got to find out what's going on here. So spread the word. We also accept sponsorships for events. So if you or your organization, if you work for an organization, a company that sponsors events, we host a lot of conversations and different events to get information to people. We do sponsored content, which is kind of like advertising. You might have heard of it as advertorials or branded content. You can also become a member. Our philosophy is very important to us that we do not have a paywall. You will never, ever have to pay to read Spotlight Delaware content because we believe that all people should have access to local news and information because all people deserve to be able to participate in our community and our democracy, whether they can afford to pay or not. We are a membership model, though. We ask people kind of like NPR, if you're able to contribute $10, $20, $30 a month, that really helps us to be able to do our work. And we also accept major gifts in all different forms. So yes. Thank you, Dave. That's an important slide to miss.
Sure. And I will confess that I committed to making a donation that I still have to do, but I will.
Thank
And,
you.
I get the 3 times, soon to be 5 times a week email from Spotlight with stories. So it's great coverage. I mean, I got to say, I think there's more coverage in each one of the emails I get from Spotlight than there is in typical News Journal in terms of the amount of local coverage the News Journal has, which is typically maybe 2 or 3 articles a day. And I guess the other thing I'll say about the Spotlight is, as evidenced by the articles that you do that are in the News Journal and your own other work, is that the journalism is more in depth. The articles are longer, the analysis and factual information is much greater than what I think was typical. I had one question I wanted to ask you to maybe to get things off, and that is, what are the
Dave,
economics? Yeah,
Dave, if I could interrupt for a second. Allison, if you would stop sharing your screen, then we could see everybody's face
Of
while
course.
we have the conversation. That would be lovely.
Great. Yes, thank you.
I was going to ask you, as I did when we had coffees, what are the economics that cause the creation of what people are now referring to as news deserts?
Yeah, absolutely. So newspapers, we've never really paid much as subscribers for newspapers. Newspapers used to make all their money off of the advertising. And what happened was with the rise of the internet, the demand for all of those print advertisements went away. Some of you might remember Craigslist. When Craigslist first came out, it just started to suck the wind right out of printed newspapers revenue streams. So that was the first big chunk of revenue that got taken away because Craigslist, I'm going to forget the exact numbers, but it's something like apartment rentals and job ads. And I've forgotten the other thing. I think it might have been like car sales or something, constituted about 60% of a newspaper's revenue stream. So when all of that stuff started being advertised online, poof, away went 60% of the revenue stream. And then as the internet started to get bigger and bigger, and now we see advertising on Google ads or on Facebook ads, more and more organizations do their advertising that way. And a lot of folks stopped advertising in print. So all those newspapers that had been relying on those advertisers suddenly had no revenue streams. And they have not been able to replace that revenue. You all know about, the News Journal started Delaware Online. So they created an online version and started doing advertising on there, but it doesn't make up for all that lost print revenue. So they just, because they don't have any money anymore, they've gradually had to cut their staffs back and back and back. And it's, there's very hardworking, dedicated reporters and editors working in the state of Delaware for the News Journal, the New York Post, the Cape Gazette. They're doing as much as they can, but they don't have the staffs anymore because the companies don't have the revenue.
And I take it the subscription prices can't fill that void, or
No, it's very expensive to run a newsroom, as I'm starting to learn. It costs about $125,000 a year to support one reporter in a newsroom. Because, you got to imagine these are professionals, they have families, they need health insurance, they need a reasonable salary. And then, there's taxes and all of that stuff. So even if you're only paying a newspaper reporter $50 or $60,000, by the time you add in health insurance and taxes and such, it gets up to 100,000 pretty darn quickly. And if we have to pay more than $25 a month to subscribe to the News Journal, we go, it's not worth it anymore, right? And you can probably find that stuff for free somewhere else anyway. But in reality, it's still not free. If you see a News Journal story, a lot of people will say, well, I just get my local news on Facebook, or I just get it on social media. Facebook is not producing that local news, right? Somebody at the local level has to produce that news in order for Facebook to be able to take it and recirculate it. So where you're actually getting it from is what little is left of the News Journal or WILM or WDEL. But because there's so much, because those local organizations have been gutted, Facebook has less and less to serve you. So you end up getting less and less.
Allison, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roger.
Hi, Roger.
So I so appreciate what you're doing and the whole idea of your organization, and
Thank you.
intend to support you. But one of the things I heard on a commentator last night after the latest debate was we always had the phrase, all politics is local. And that phrase now seems to have been replaced, as the commentator said, is all politics is national.
That's true.
But it is, because I look at what we pay attention to on TV, and we don't watch the local news, which seems to be what latest fire in Philadelphia, or how somebody got murdered in
That's right.
Philadelphia. And so what I do count on is the News Journal, which we still subscribe to, which has got very expensive.
Yes.
Those can't get around that, but we feel like we need to support it, or otherwise we wouldn't have the local. So I don't see any way around it, but I think your organization is a good step forward.
I
So
really
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. And, we when we launched Spotlight, some people have asked us if we're trying to replace the News Journal, or if we're trying to put Delaware Public Media out of business, or, you know, what are we doing? Why are we doing this kind of thing? But our model is actually designed to try to lift all boats, because what we do is we create formal partnerships with any news organization in the state that will work with us. And we don't ask them for any money. We ask them to make a partnership agreement with us, and we give them all of our content 100% free. And then in return, we ask for them to give us appropriate credit, you know, to show that it's from Spotlight Delaware. And we ask them to participate in a monthly editorial meeting with us. So we get all the editors from around the state to join us in a meeting once a month and talk about what are the stories that you know your community needs that you can't get to. You know, what we don't want to take anybody's story, right? We still, if you got a scoop, keep your scoop. But if there's a story that your team just doesn't have the capacity to get to, you know, we have a couple of Spanish speaking reporters on our staff. If there's a newsroom in Delaware, there's one downstate, some of you might have heard of, the Laurel Star. They're one of our partners. That's a one-man newsroom. But if they are trying to do a story that involves Spanish-speaking people and they don't have a Spanish-speaking reporter, how are they going to do that story fully? Well, the way they can do it is they can borrow our reporter. They can borrow Jose Ignacio to help them do a better job with that story. And we also have conversations to try to figure out, are there stories we can partner on so that we can do a better job and then share that better information? And can we also help avoid duplication? You know, we don't really need a reporter from Spotlight Delaware, the News Journal, the Cape Gazette, and the Newark Post, all covering the same, you know, shooting or arson or whatever. Let's figure out if one person can go do that. And then we'll go over here. We'll ask the Newark Post to go cover this thing happening at UD. Spotlight will take this, I don't know, critical race theory story that's going on, and then we all swap. And then all of our communities get the benefit of all of that good reporting. And it makes each product stronger. So they can all sell more advertising, more subscriptions. They can make more money to bring up their product too.
Allison, I'm not deeply embedded in social media. Facebook is kind of my thing, which I think says something about me. But in any case, one of the Facebook accounts or pages that I have particularly become interested in is Delaware Voices Uplifted.
I don't know that one. I'll
Nitra
look for it.
Johnson is a reporter for the News Journal, and
Oh.
her beat has been stories that impact or interest underserved communities.
Yes.
At least in Wilmington. I'm not sure how broad the geography is. But there are some wonderful pieces that show up on that Facebook page about East Side and Southbridge and Wilmington. And I'm wondering if you have any involvement or engagement with Anitra and Delaware Voices Uplifted.
I had not realized, yeah, I do. And I had forgotten that they created a whole Facebook page for those stories. I love Anitra's work. She does work for the News Journal, so we don't have a direct partnership with her as an individual, but we have a partnership with the News Journal, of course. I think her work is spectacular. And we're looking at ways, there's some liability issues that we're trying to figure out, but we're looking at ways that we can also start sharing the work of our partners as they are able to share ours. So my hope is that we can cross-fertilize more in months and years to come.
Yeah, we had been in touch with Anitra back, I don't know, a couple years ago, I think when the announcement was made of the Wilmington City Council deciding to create a reparations task force.
Right.
And she wrote an article in the News Journal about it, and we contacted her to see if maybe she could come and give a program, one of our Thursday evening programs. And she said, on the one hand, she would be interested in doing that, but on the other hand, she would have to get approval from the News Journal editorial staff for anything that she did that wasn't part of her job in the News Journal. And because that task force was very slow in forming and very slow in moving forward, we ended up not following up on that. But even at the time, she seemed like a great resource for us to
Yeah.
gather more information about certainly some of the less reported things that are going on in the city. We work with Reach Riverside
Yes.
and the WRK group in Wilmington, and have been involved in, community fridges and the new community center that's being built there in Imani Village. Westminster has been very involved in that. And those are the kinds of communities I think that Anitra's programs and reporting is kind of
Yeah.
focused on.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. We actually just did a story, a really in-depth look at Kingswood. So I dropped that link in the chat here for you. This is the first in a series of stories that we're doing about different communities throughout the state. A lot of our work is investigative. It's hard news. A lot of what we do, as Dave was saying, our pieces are longer. We don't do breaking news. We're not trying to cover the shootings and the car accidents and that kind of thing. Our reporters take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes to produce a single story. And most of it is more investigative. But this series is going to be specifically looking at different communities and looking at how communities have evolved over time in Delaware. One that we're looking at, I think it's coming out in a couple of weeks, is about the Nanacoke indigenous community, a little bit downstate. I don't know when it's happening, but I'm eager for us to look at what's going on in the Bridgeville Seaford area, where the Haitian population has become really important. And it just wasn't there 25 years ago. And I think that's a fascinating evolution. There's somebody told me, I've been in Delaware 25 years. Somebody told me in a town in Kent County, there's a little crabbing community that I had never heard of. And so one of our reporters is going to really dig into learning about the families that have been crabbing there for generations and tell that story. So that's kind of part of what we're doing in this series. But yeah, the Kingswood one, it's a beautiful piece.
Great. I will look that up. I have not seen it. Well, I will sign up for your newsletter.
Thank you.
I have heard of you, and I will tell you, I get more emails and texts than any 7 human beings need. But it is possible to opt out of some of them. So
Yes.
I'll seek to do that.
I will share with you that I'll brag a little bit that our emails have an extremely high open rate, because I think people have started to recognize the value and the richness of the content. It's worth it. Even if you just read, the couple of paragraphs from the top of each story, you get a lot of richness about what's happening in the state. If I do say so myself.
Yeah, you're allowed. You're allowed.
I'm just proud of my team. I don't do the writing anymore. Okay. They're just really good at this.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Allison, I wanted to ask you two questions. One that follows up on something you said. You mentioned that you meet with your partner organizations to talk about what areas need coverage that don't have it. I wondered, what are those areas, at least in your view, in Delaware, that need coverage and aren't currently getting it? And the second question I wanted to ask you sort of ties in maybe to this is, and this I guess is journalism generally, but what are your news sources? Are they mostly individuals telling you things, or are there public sources that you go to, or how do you get the
Yeah.
news?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So to answer the first one, um, that's kind of what I was talking about being community powered and all the community listening that we do is we're trying to kind of flip the script. Journalism, kind of like art, used to be there were a bunch of important people who sat up in a room and told you this is what the news is, this is what journalism is, and this is what art is, right? This is what academics are. Now we're trying to flip that around and make it more of a dialogue. What is important to you? So we go talk to people and find out. And we did about a year of research of just deep community listening before we actually launched Spotlight Delaware. And what we heard from the community first, loud and clear, was that they want and need, or I should say, you want and need more local news and information, right? We get tired of hearing about Trump and Biden, but we need to know what's going on here. And then people told us about several specific issues that they really needed more information about. One is government accountability. They wanted to, we can't tell you how many times we heard the General Assembly, what's going on down there in Dover? It has become the Wild West. Nobody is watching. Nobody is paying attention. We need better oversight over our government. So government accountability was number one. Number two was education. Until we hired Julia Marola, the state of Delaware had not had a dedicated education reporter for years. It had been years without a dedicated education reporter. That's why we knew we had to make that a priority. The third thing that it took me a while to get my brain around, people were talking about land use. And to me, that sounded super boring. But when I realized what they're really saying, and you probably get this, when somebody makes a decision about a new development, yes or no, or whatever, it affects the traffic, it affects the environment, of course, it affects infrastructure, healthcare. And then people kept saying to us, who the heck is making these decisions and why is it too late when we find out? So people asked us for government accountability, education, and land use. A close fourth is healthcare. So we didn't want to spread ourselves too thin. So we started with those big three buckets, but we're very quickly getting pulled into healthcare.
Yeah.
And underlying all of that is community, right? We're trying to help people build social capital here, especially people who don't have it, building power for people. And that's where this deep community reporting comes in.
Speaking as someone who lives in Yorkland, Delaware,
Oh, you have a complaint?
yeah, and the Quarry Walk project that moved out from under the county and into Denrec. It's
Oh,
extraordinary. It's
I
extraordinary.
would say that I don't know if this is true throughout the state, but we have in this area the Greater Hockessin Area Development Association.
Yes.
And I think it's a very opaque organization. I tried to get a hold of their minutes one time. They said, "Oh, we stopped doing minutes." And and I tried to attend a meeting one time. They said, "Oh, we changed the date."
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, and so I'm
Yeah.
like, well, where's the
Just saying,
transparency?
just
And
saying.
it's not a
Yeah.
political organization. Yeah, it's like
Oh, yes, it is.
well, okay,
I
yeah.
know.
Yes, it
I
is.
know that
Oh,
But
yes, it
it's,
organization.
it's theoretically a civic organization.
No.
What
Oh,
what are
oh,
they?
Roger. Oh, Roger.
Yeah, it's
It's
so
a small
opaque.
piece. Yeah. Delaware is one of the least transparent states in the nation, which is why we need better government accountability reporting here. And we need reporters who have experience, right? We have already done more Freedom of Information Act work in the past 6 months since we launched, compared to what most newsrooms do in years, because it's expensive and it's time consuming. Right now, we are in the process of going through 500 pages of grant reports on those opioid grants. that I
Mhm.
alluded to earlier, because there has been some misbehavior. So
Mm.
we are looking at all the documents to see exactly what happened. Coming back, Dave, to your question about sources, journalists will talk to anybody, and anybody and everybody is a source. I haven't been a newspaper reporter for 25 years myself. I was a reporter at the News Journal for a few years, and then for family reasons, I left and did some different work. But obviously, I can talk to anybody. So, but we were trained in journalism school to ask questions and to sometimes ask the question that seems rude, right? And to go to government officials. And government officials are very important sources because they control a lot of that information. Those documents are the documents Roger's trying to get his hands on. Those are all public. Those belong to us as taxpayers. They belong to us, and we should be able to get them. Um, Anybody and everybody is a source. Especially now, I get phone calls and texts day and night with story ideas and leads, and some of them turn out to be crazies, and some of them turn out to be crazies who are right. Sometimes somebody I think, oh boy, this is a wild one, and then it turns out to be right.
Yeah, very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
It sounds like fascinating work
Yeah.
to do, Allison. Like you sort of wake up in the morning and you just never know what's gonna come across your desk or your text or your email
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. It is, and it's sometimes it's really hard. I was saying to someone earlier, I've been in Delaware a long time. I have a lot of deep relationships here, and I have some people who are very angry with me right now because we are starting to expose some things that they don't want exposed.
Mhm.
And that's my job, and it also hurts my heart sometimes, but
Sure.
it's more important to, when things are not done right, we have a social responsibility to do that. But most of the time it's fun and it's joyful to get to hear people's stories and to talk to people and to be constantly learning things.
Where do you get do you carry, and I should have noticed this, but opinion pieces or editorial pieces, or is it all?
No, we don't. We might one day, but our our effort is, I don't really believe in objectivity. We all bring life experience. We
Sure.
all have a little bit of a bent, but we try to be as balanced and as close to objective as we can. It's important to me, it's important to my team, that we be trusted by people on various points of the political spectrum. Of course, I have my personal politics. Of course, I have personal social beliefs and political beliefs. But my job here is to try to present information with as little bias and as much balance as possible. And lacking that, I think, is part of what has I think it is what has caused our lack of shared reality that we face as a nation right now. You'll all remember, I bet, when the alternative facts came out, right? That's the universe we're living in right now, because frankly, that is what sells. The middle does not sell. It is not sexy to present unbiased news. If I wanted to actually make money and generate lots and lots of clicks and views, I would create Spotlight Delaware as either a very right wing or a very left wing outlet. Trying to present something in the middle, it's not sexy. It doesn't sell.
Mm,
That's why it needs to be a nonprofit.
wow. I had heard that about I'd heard the comments made about the news focuses on the negative. It's sort of news focuses on the bad news because audiences click on bad news, don't click on good news. But I hadn't heard about it's the I guess the more, I hate to use the word extreme because I don't necessarily think it means that they're extreme, but it's the it's the most active, I guess, uh, portions of the political spectrum that get the attention and get the clicks. I hadn't heard.
Yeah.
Well, I think people tend to focus on that which confirms the beliefs that they already hold.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we and I do it too. We seek out that which confirms our existing beliefs.
Yeah.
That's how we ended up with you know, all the a lot of polls and a lot of people believing that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and then waking up the next morning and being absolutely dumbfounded when the numbers were there all along showing that Trump was winning. But we didn't seek that out. We looked at, Sue and I were looking at our Facebook feeds, right? And probably a bunch of us were looking
got
thinking,
it.
oh, looks like Hillary's doing just fine. Yeah, but because we seek that out. And that's, you know, you probably, many of you have probably heard about, you know, how the Murdoch family runs the Fox News network, that they run it the way they do because that's how they make money.
Right.
And they figured out early on that the way to really build their audience and build that loyalty was to lean in hard to one particular side.
Okay.
And that's what they do. And that's how they do well. They do very well.
Yeah.
Just not
Yeah.
as a news organization, but hey,
Yeah.
How do
Never
you
mind.
define it anymore,
Never
right?
mind.
I know.
Never
It is it's frustrating.
Well, I was going to ask you, and this may be a question you don't want to necessarily answer, but are there, you know, we're all concerned about the reliability of our news sources. And I've signed up, I don't know where, actually, I don't know where I get them from. I think I signed up for Substack and I get a variety of people on Substack sending me stuff. But it really raises the question of how do I know, how do I judge the reliability of my news sources? And are there news sources in Delaware, either online or, you know, otherwise, that you would consider to be unreliable?
Yeah, there are. And I think that there's also you know, there's unreliable and then there's different degrees of that, right? So there is one thing that in professional journalism, one of the important things is to always be transparent, right? If you see a story on Spotlight Delaware, it's going to say the name of the reporter who wrote that. It's important that you know as a consumer who created that piece of work. When you see anonymous journalism out there, that I consider highly unreliable because you don't know who's behind that. That could be Vladimir Putin writing that, right? I mean, that could be Sarah McBride writing a beautiful piece about what a fabulous senator she is, you know, and who knows?
Well, that's certainly reliable, Alex.
Right, yeah, you know. But it's really important that you know who the author, who produced that piece of information, so you as a consumer can decide if you are going to trust that person or assess whether that person might have a bias or what is it that they are bringing to that piece. And I'll, you know, we're being recorded, so well, I guess it doesn't matter. There's one out there called First State Update that is an anonymous source that I know a lot of folks look to because they cover a lot of car accidents and traffic stuff. I mean, for car accidents and traffic stuff, fine. But am I going to look to First State Update for political coverage? Personally, I'm not, because I don't know who that is.
Mhm.
That could be, I mean, that could be Matt Meyer writing. It's not, but you know, it could be, it could be anybody, and we don't know who is producing that information and what their agenda is.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I think we should have transparency about. There are a couple of news organizations in Delaware that have a political agenda and have been very transparent about that. Some people dislike that. I actually think as long as you're honest about it, there's room for advocacy, what is known as advocacy journalism. Some of you might be familiar with the Delaware Call, CALL. It's a very liberal news outlet, and they are very clear that they are, the guy who runs it is very clear. He says he's a communist. He is very specific about that. I respect that he has put his agenda out there and he says who he is. I also then know how to approach that journalism. I know what his take is and that he's coming to it with a perspective. So I can think about, what do I think of that perspective? Delaware Live is an online news outlet that was created by Chris Kenny, who is the owner of all the ShopRites in Delaware. And Chris is a very active Republican, conservative, libertarian, something of that ilk. And up until about a week ago, it was run by Brian Shoup, who is also a Republican state representative. So they, from pretty early on, they waffle on this a little bit, but from pretty early on, they've said, pardon?
That was my computer talking to me.
Okay.
Sorry.
They've said from pretty early on that part of the reason they started Delaware Live was to bring more Republican voices to the fore. So that's, to me, at least they're being transparent about that, right? So when I go to read something on Delaware Live, I know to expect there to be more Republican perspective in that.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Dave, for inviting Allison to give the program this evening. It's been very instructive, very helpful.
Thank you.
I'm signing up for the newsletter.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, as I expect many others may. In this period where the divisions are so stark and inaccuracies can be quite clear, finding the truth, finding the middle ground, finding a basis for meaningful dialogue is a real challenge. And certainly putting out there information that people can use as common ground or a starting point for dialogue is really important to the continuing success, if not existence, of this miraculous experiment that we have going on in the United States. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you
work.
all so much. I love talking about this, and thank you for the opportunity. And you have my email address, and really story ideas, send them, tips, anything you think of, questions. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much.
If you would just stay on for a second, Allison,
Of
that would
course.
be great. Okay, thanks. Good night, all. Thank you for being
you.
here. Allison, I just wanted to comment that I think on one of your slides, you had a bad email address for Jake Owens.
Thank you for catching that. Okay.
Yeah,
I will go in and fix
I
that.
think you had the email address of the next person
Oh,
on the list. So just wanted
I
to
appreciate that.
just wanted to
Thank
let you know.
Okay.
Wow.
Every editor needs an editor, right?
I was going to say, as the world's worst proofreader,
I'm one of
Like,
the
I
world's
guess-
best proofreaders.
you are, well, I am the world's worst. I always used to say I can read a brief 100 times, and as soon as I file it, I'll read it and I'll pick up all the
Oh, no.
typos. But I won't
You
see them as I'm.
are-
Yeah.
So about 100 years ago, my office mate and I at DuPont were asked to proofread the annual report for the company. And we did. And I found like 637 errors, and my office mate Gordon found none. And I'm like,
Gordon sounds like my kind of guy.
well, his point was, if I find errors, they're going to ask me to do this again.
That sounds like a man, doesn't
Oh,
it?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
I gotta say, I don't there's gotta be something, there's gotta be something gender related about my inability to how many times have I said to Sally, have you seen my such and such? And I'm standing there asking her and I'm looking right at
And
it
you're
and I
looking
don't
right
see
at
it.
it. Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah,
Y chromosome thing, Dave. Yeah.
yeah, it must be.
Want to be
It must
clear.
be.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right.
Dave, I saw Sally at the polls and she said she was going to email me. Do you
Yeah,
mind sharing her email? Because I haven't heard from her yet.
sure. In fact, she's
Oh,
maybe asleep on the couch
well, I don't
next
want
to
to
me. But
bother if she's
no,
not
no,
well, but
I'll give you her email. It's
okay.
sfmcbride6
Okay.
at gmail.com.
Perfect. Perfect. I know how busy she is, and I just wanted to catch up with her. She was so kind to me, and I appreciated that. So I hope to
Well,
see you both soon. And thank you,
I hope
Sue.
so too. I hope so
Yes.
too.
I know y'all are busy through election day, but after
Yeah.
that, let's get dinner or coffee or something, okay?
Would love to. Would love to.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks again, Allison. Thank you, Dave. Say hi to
Thank you
Sally.
both.
All
Good
Thanks,
right.
night.
Allison.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.